Today we're going to be talking about square roots. So to figure out what a square root is, first of all we might need to know what perfect squares are. So let's say we have 1 squared equals 1. That's a perfect square. 2 squared equals 4. So 4 is a perfect square. 3 squared equals 9. So 9 is a perfect square. 4 squared equals 16. 16 is a perfect square. So basically, when you have something like 5 squared, that means simply do 5 times 5, which equals 25. Those are perfect squares. Now, one of the reasons you might want to call that a perfect square, think about it. If you have 1, there's 1 perfect square. If you do a 2 by 2, you get 4. If you do a 3 by 3, you get 9. So when you look at each of these, they actually form perfect squares. So, what's a square root of a perfect square? Well, let's look at this. If we're looking at the square root of 36, what number times itself gives you 36? Well, how about 6? You can actually think of this as 6 times 6, and that will equal 6. So basically it's saying do the reverse of when you square a number. Unsquared, if you want to think of it that way. What's the square root of 81? Well, what number times itself gives you 81? How about 9? Wow, this seems really simple. Until you get numbers like this. You look at those numbers and you're going, can I do this? Well, let's take it a piece at a time. Do what's under the radical first. So what's the square root of 64? 8. So we get -8 because it's the opposite of the square root of 64, or the opposite of 8, which is -8. Now look at this next one, -49. What number times itself will give you -49? Well, is there any number times itself that can give you a negative? Because if you do a negative times a negative, you're always going to end up with a positive. So there's no way to do this problem. Well, at least not till you get to Algebra 2. So, sometimes the numbers aren't nice and pretty. In other words, they're not perfect squares. Like, what's the square root of 56? Well, the way we do this one is we simply look at it and we go, hey, there's the square root of 56. What perfect squares is it between? How about the square root of 49 and the square root of 64? That's why it's important for you to know your perfect squares. It's in between those two perfect squares. Well, what's the square root of 49? 7. What's the square root of 64? 8. So we know that the square root of 56 is somewhere between 7 and 8. How about the square root of 30? What's it between? Okay, the square root of 25 is on the lower side. The next one up would be the square root of 36. What's the square root of 25? 5. What's the square root of 36? 6. So we know that the square root of 30 is somewhere between 5 and 6. Well, is that all there is to it? Is that as easy as it gets? We take it one step further. What if we really wanted to know the square root of 56? We just found out that it's somewhere between the square root of 49 and the square root of 64. It's somewhere between 7 and 8. Could we estimate it to the nearest tenth? How would we do that? Well, I hate to tell you this, but it's kind of a guessing game. So let's try 7.5 times 7.5. I am totally guessing right now, and I'm just multiplying these two numbers together. So they'd be 35, 36, 37, 35, carry my 3, 49, 51, 52, 53. So this came out, if I did all this multiplication right, 3, 6, 7, 57.25. Well, that's a little bit higher than 56. So why don't I try and go lower than that? Let me go 7.4 times 7.4. I get 16. Carry my 1. That would be 28, 29. That 7 times 4 is 28. Carry my 2. 7 times 7 is 49. 51, 52. This time, it came out to 55.76. So now I have to say to myself, which one of these is closer, 55.76 or 57.25? Well, it's obviously going to be the 55.76. So if I were estimating the square root of 56, I would say it's closest to 7.4. Okay, so they might be a little bit confused. So let's try it again, except for this time use the square root of 30. So we do the square root of 25 and the square root of 36. Those are the two perfect squares. So we know it's between 5 and 6. What number should I choose? I'm going to choose 5.4. Why am I choosing 5.4? Because 30 is in between 25 and 36, and it's a little bit closer to 25. So I'm going to use 5.4. So I get 16, 20, 21. I get 20, carrying my 2, 25, 26, 27. And so on this one, I got 29.16. That's pretty close. So since this was below 30, I'm going to go to the next one up and go 5.5. So I get 25, carrying my 2, 25, 26, 27. And this one should come out the same thing. 5, 12, carry my 1, 10, carry my 1. So which is closer, 30.25 or 29.16? Well, it's the 30.25. So I'll get 5.5. Now I happen to just get lucky and pick the numbers that were closest, and you'll get closer as you do it, but sometimes you have to continue this process. But the thing you're looking for is you want one number that's lower than your target number and one number that's higher than your target number. And these two numbers need to just be 1/10 apart. So get some help with this, work with your friends on it. It's not really too bad to do, but it is a little bit of work.